are live. So good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, and we do have some classes joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Today's speaker brings a little bit of all three of those at once, which is really exciting. Oh, we just got our sixth class. Awesome. All month long, we are highlighting Epic Earth. We are showcasing amazing places, and extreme people who push the boundaries of exploration all around the world. So all month long, we're doing that. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of that. We have 6 classes from across North America. A lot of Ontario today. It's Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the US, which is fantastic, which means we have a lot of Canadian classrooms today with us. So I'm going to give them a chance to say hi before we dive in. We've got Miss Gallant's grade 6s in Guelph, Ontario. Hi, guys. Hey, welcome in. We've got Miss Levine's just joined us, grade 6s in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey, welcome in. Get into the class. Perfect. We've got Miss Prezenko's grade 3-4s in Lindsay, Ontario. Hi, guys. In. There we are. Oh, still got some audio problems, but that's okay. They're there. They're excited. We've got Miss Peck's grade 6s in Crediton in Ontario. Hi, guys.
Hi.
A lot of grade 6s today. This is exciting. All right. And we've got Miss Hewitt's grade 6s in Burlington. Their mic's not working, but we're going to show them anyway. Let's bring them up. See Miss Hewitt's class. Hey, guys. Welcome in. And last but not least, our only U.S. classroom today, joining us from Wrightstown in Wisconsin, Mrs. Wickie's grade 3 class. Hi, guys. Oh, we got all the mic difficulties today with classes, but as long as they can hear us, we are set. Of course, the reason you guys are all here today is for our speaker. So we are joined live in Toronto, Ontario, where I am as well, by George Kourounis. So he is an explorer in residence for the Royal Canadian Geographical Society, one of the most fantastic educational and scientific organizations in Canada. He has done probably 20, 30 sessions with us over the years. He's been involved since the very get-go. Always fantastic to explore these wild and wonderful places from around the world. Today, for Epic Earth, he is going to take us to Naica Crystal Caves in Mexico, one of the most unique habitats on Earth. We're going to explore a little bit about how that ecosystem has changed over time as well, and what it takes to survive in such a unique and fantastic environment. Without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, George, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. It's great to be here yet again, chatting with you in all these classrooms from across mostly Canada, and you guys from Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us. That is fantastic. So what I do is I specialize in documenting extreme places all over the world. So I chase tornadoes and I climb inside volcanoes, things like that. But today we're talking about a particular cave that I did an expedition to. And this is no ordinary cave. It is probably the most, in my opinion, the most beautiful place on planet Earth, which really fits into this whole Epic Earth theme this month, because it is as dangerous as it is beautiful. And I'm going to get into why in a second here, because me talking about this cave is one thing. You need to see it. So let me get the screen sharing up here. And we will rock this because it is really, really cool. There we go. All right. So yeah, so I'm an explorer, storm chaser, photographer, television host. And a number of years ago, we got permission, which is difficult to do, to go here. The Crystal Cave of Giants in Naica, Mexico. And this place looks like something from a science fiction movie. And yes, that is me inside the cave in that orange suit with the backpack on, looking kind of like an astronaut on another planet. And it really is kind of like going to another planet. This cave has the largest crystals that have ever been discovered anywhere on planet Earth. Some of them are 30 feet long, 10 meters long, and weigh up to 55 tons. So they are absolutely massive. They're like tree trunks. I was literally climbing over top of them in some places. So where is this cave? It's, as I mentioned, it's in Mexico, near the city of Chihuahua. If you look, there's that arrow pointing down just sort of north of Chihuahua. And yes, that's where the little dogs got their name from, is from this part of Mexico. So the cave was accidentally discovered in a silver mine. So there's this place in Mexico where they mine for silver, lead, and zinc. And as they've been drilling down and building these tunnels, they've found a number of these crystal caves, and they find them at different depths in the mine. And the deeper they go in the mine, the bigger the crystals they find. And so the Crystal Cave of Giants, the one I'm going to show you today, it's about 290 meters down. It's about 900 feet underground. So it's really deep. And it's in the side of a mountain. And the mountain itself, it was formed by the pressure of liquid rock, this magma pushing up from deep within the Earth's crust. And that makes the mine very hot and very humid, because all the groundwater, the water that's underground, if you dig a well and you get water from that well, imagine if that water has been heated by liquid rock underneath. So the conditions inside the cave are sometimes up to 55 Celsius, that's about 125 Fahrenheit, with almost 90% humidity. So you've got the heat of the Sahara Desert combined with the humidity of the Amazon jungle. And here's sort of like a cross section of the mine. And on the right side, if you look, it says mine entrance. That's where you go into the mine. And then it zigzags down deeper and deeper and deeper. And on the left-hand side, look at that dark black blob there that says cristales. That's where the cave is. And the mine actually extends much, much deeper underneath the cave. So it's this huge complex. It's been open for about 100 years. And the cave was accidentally discovered in the year 2000. So we've only known about it for 20 years. This is what the mine looks like from the outside. And that tunnel is where you go in. So how do you get to a cave of crystals that's 900 feet underground? Well, you drive to it. Seriously, you drive to it. So we got into a van. Here's a night vision shot of looking. There's the front wheel of the van driving through this mine. So you get in the van and you drive down into the mine, deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, zigzagging your way down. And it takes about 40 to 45 minutes of driving deep underground to get to where the cave is. And as you get deeper, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter until you reach this area here. And this is the preparation or staging area where we need to get ourselves equipped to go into this mine, or into the cave rather. So this is part of the silver mine. And it is unbelievably hot here. It's about 45 Celsius. So we're talking 95 Fahrenheit, something like that. And we have to get tested by a doctor every time we go into the cave and every time we come out. We have these special suits. That orange suit that I was wearing, there we go, is filled with ice to keep our body temperature cool, because you can overheat very quickly. And the respirator that I'm wearing is actually attached to a backpack that is filled with ice. So there's all these special freezers in this staging area. There's one of the freezers, and that's one of the backpacks. Those red canisters are filled with ice, and there's a fan that blows across those into the face mask that I'm wearing. So without any protection at all, you could go into the cave and you'd be able to survive in there for maybe about 20 minutes. Any longer than that, and it's fatal, you will die. You'll actually drown, because all the humidity in the air will cool and condense on the inside of your lungs. Imagine you've got a cold drink on a hot day outside in the summer. You know all the little drops of water that form on the outside of the glass? That's what would happen inside your lungs. So it's a deadly place. It's very dangerous. And even with all of this special cooling equipment that we're wearing, we could only go in for about 40 minutes at a time, maybe 45 minutes at a time. And then you have to come out into into this preparation area here, rest for an hour and a half, and then go back inside. So here we are, a couple of us preparing to go inside. We were making a television program called Angry Planet, trying to document this place. And we're suited up. It's unbelievably hot, and we're about to step into this beautiful cave. So there's a doorway that connects the mine to the cave, and this is the view of the doorway. The mining company has installed this portal sort of thing to get you into this cave. And it took us almost 2 years to get permission to go inside this cave for one day. So access to this cave is extremely restricted. It's one of the least visited spots on planet Earth because it's so dangerous to walk around in here. If you fall, you're going to fall on one of these crystals. The crystals themselves, they don't want them to get damaged. It's just so beautiful. So on the inside, this is what it looks like. It looks like ice. So you expect it to be cold, but it's so unbelievably hot. The heat and humidity just hits you in the face and you immediately start sweating like crazy, even when you're wearing the suits. So your hands are dripping with sweat. And everywhere you look, there's these giant tree trunk white crystals, and they're absolutely just so beautiful. And the way the crystal cave formed is there was a pocket, an empty space in the mountain that was filled with groundwater. And that groundwater was very hot because it was heated by that liquid rock, that magma from deep below the earth. And there was a lot of minerals dissolved inside that water. And the conditions were just perfect. The water temperature was the right temperature with the right amount of minerals that these giant crystals were able to form. And it took, we're not sure exactly how long it took, but anywhere between 600,000 to 1,000,000 years to form these crystals. So a long, long, long time. They grew very, very slowly. And then as the miners went deeper and deeper to mine for silver in the mountain, they have giant pumps that would pump the water out. And when they pumped the water out and they broke through into this cave, they discovered the crystals. And as long as there's no water in the cave, the crystals are not growing. So they're sort of suspended right now. And they're made out of gypsum. So crystallized gypsum is called selenite. So these crystals, they're made of selenite, and it's the same material that you find in drywall in your house, except it was allowed to form these crystals in these perfect conditions with these hot water, with the hot water deep underground. So the geology here is very unique. And it's kind of like being inside a giant geode. And you may have seen these. So a geode is one of these. This one is amethyst, the purple amethyst crystals. And this one would be about I don't know, maybe the size of a football. But the crystal cave, it's about the size of a basketball court. So imagine a geode full of crystals that you can walk around in because it's so incredibly huge. Just this, I can't even find the words to describe how beautiful this place is. So here we are, we're making the television program showcasing this place. And that's me in the middle, standing with my foot up on top of one of the crystals. And we can see that this crystal at some point has fallen and broken in half, kind of like a giant piece of dry spaghetti that has broken. And that piece of crystal probably weighs about 45 or 50 tons. There's no way you could lift it. And that's evidence that there was at one point probably a strong earthquake that shook the cave. We don't know how many years ago. Could have been 50 years ago, could have been 50,000 years ago. We don't know. And causing that crystal to drop down. So the entire time that you're in there, you're thinking, wow, this is like Superman's fortress of solitude. And there have been some studies done inside the cave looking for bacterial life inside some of these crystals. And some have been found in there. So there's little bacteria that can actually survive inside the very hot, humid environment in these little pockets of water inside the crystals. So that was a really interesting discovery. It's amazing how life can be found in some of the most harsh, extreme places on planet Earth. And so we would go in. We had one day to visit this place, walk around inside, film it, photograph it, and then we would go and rest, drink a whole bunch of Mexican tap water, and then go back inside. And after 40 minutes of being inside, you've got no strength left. Basically, what you want to do is use about maybe 30% of your strength going in, save 30% of your strength for coming out, and have another 30% of your strength in reserve in case something goes wrong. If something happens, if you twist your ankle or fall and break your leg in a place like this, no one is really going to be able to rescue you. We did have an ambulance standing by 900 feet above us at the surface, but if something happens, it's still going to take that ambulance 45 minutes to come down, drive down, and get you. So it's You have to be very, very, very cautious in a place like this. And of course, the cave is very dark. We had lights in there to light up all the crystals so you could see them properly. And they're absolutely stunning. Whoop. So I've got a little video clip here I'm going to show you guys to show you what it's like. It's about a 2-minute video. Show you what it's like to walk around inside this cave. Here we go.
One slip on this terrain could spell disaster. Watch your footing. Carrying an injured team member out of the far reaches of this place would be an almost impossible task. So we tread carefully over the 500,000-year-old crystal formations. What makes the discovery of this one-of-a-kind geological wonder even more fascinating is that until the year 2000, this entire chamber was completely underwater. The interesting thing about the mine here is that this cave is temporary. Once the mine is no longer viable, they're going to turn off the pumps, and this whole cavern will flood yet again, just like it was 500,000 years ago, totally lost to human eyes. This may be my one chance to experience this incredible place. So right now I'm sitting up on one of the larger crystals, and this is my view. Totally unreal. One of the curious features of the cave is there are some very big crystals that are broken and fallen on the floor here. There's really only one thing that could have caused it, and that's an ancient earthquake. Look at this. This crystal probably weighs about 50 tons, but yet it was snapped like it was a piece of dry spaghetti. I don't know when it happened, but I do know that this cave does lie on a fault line, so earthquakes are certainly not unheard of here, and there's proof positive of that. We struggle to explore as much of the cave as possible. We get the sign that our time is almost up. Okay, I copy that. 10 minutes.
So while we were down there, we brought one of the flags, these historic flags that are part of the Explorers Club. It's a group of a few thousand explorers around the world, and I'm Canadian chairman of the Explorers Club. So I was able to bring one of their historic flags down in the cave, and it's the first time one of those flags has ever been brought down there. So there are spots inside this cave where more people have stood on the surface of the moon, just to put it in perspective in terms of how difficult it is to operate in this place. So I'm going to turn the screen share off so that we can get to a whole bunch of questions, because I'm sure you have some questions about this place. And can you hear me? We're good?
Yeah, we're great. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
That was fantastic. So yeah, guys, let's dive in with questions. We got our 6 classes live. We got tons of time for questions. So I'm going to start with Miss Gallant's class. If you guys want to kick us off and come on up, you are good to go.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, you're great. Oh, so come really close to the camera. Your computer, it's like when we heard the teacher, but yeah.
The crystals are really
Miss Gallant, can you repeat that for us?
If the crystals are really hot, how is he touching them with his bare hands?
If the crystals are really hot, how are you touching them with your bare hands, George?
Okay, that's a really good question. So the heat inside the cave comes from that liquid rock heating up the groundwater, and that what creates all of the humidity in the air and the heat in the air. The crystals themselves don't get very hot. So you can put your hands on them and you won't get burned. That's not a problem at all. The problem is the air and how hot and humid the air is. And the crystals themselves are actually, they're pretty soft. The selenite material that they're made from is only about as hard as your fingernails. So when you are putting your hands on them, you have to be very careful not to damage the crystals. So not wearing gloves is actually a good way to protect the crystals, so you don't actually accidentally bump them, and you don't have to worry about getting burned.
Excellent. All right. Let's go to Miss Levine's class. If you guys have a question. Now, I know you got 2 things on, so I'm going to see which one is your actual Oh, other one. Wrong one. There we go. You should be good.
Hi.
Hi.
We have a question from Ethan.
What is the square footage of the cave?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I'm not sure. It's hard. Figuring out the square footage of a square is easy, but an unusual shaped thing like a cave full of crystals is very difficult. But I do know it's a little bit bigger than a basketball court. So it's not that big as far as caves go. There are caves in this world that go on for miles and miles and miles and miles. So it's pretty small by cave standards, but by geode standards, it's the largest one in the world. So we would go in, and because it's so hot and humid, it's difficult to move. And the terrain is very difficult. You're climbing over top of these crystals. So just to get from one side of the cave to the other and back takes up your entire time that you have in the cave. By the time you leave, all the ice in your cooling suit has melted. All the ice in your respirator backpack has melted, so you're not breathing that cool air anymore. And every cell in your body is saying, get out, leave this place, except your eyes. Your eyes are saying, stay here because it's so beautiful.
Awesome. All right. Ms. Brzezinko's class, if you guys have one, come on up.
Nice and loud, okay, Sophie? Nice and loud.
What are
Did
the
you hear
properties? Just a little bit. What are the properties of something?
Selenite.
Selenite.
Selenite. So selenite is not precious. It's not like a diamond or a ruby or an emerald. So even though it is a crystal, similar to what they are, selenite is actually pretty common. It's just gypsum that has formed in these particular conditions. Now, because these crystals are so big, I suppose they could have value, but getting them out of there would be difficult. Plus, we had a very strict policy. Leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but photos. So even though I really, really, really wanted to take a piece of crystal home with me, I didn't. I left every piece behind. And the selenite itself, it's this sort of cloudy white crystal with these occasional dark streaks of dirt in them. And like I said before, it's a very soft crystal, so they damage really easily. All the crystals at the front of the cave, where people go in at the very beginning, they all were sort of eroded and worn down, so all the sharp edges were gone. But the deeper you go into the cave, the sharper the crystals were because they weren't touched as often.
Yeah, how cool is that? You mentioned leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but photos. I just want to follow up really quickly on that. That's something that's actually come up in a few of our presentations this month. That's a good message for any sort of archaeological site or a fantastic natural site, petrified wood in the southern US. Like, I'm sure you've had experiences where you've been tempted to take a lot of things before, but for the safety and for the continuation of that ecosystem and habitat, you don't.
Well, exactly. If you want these places to be around for future generations, if every person takes a little piece, then there's going to be nothing left, right? So that's important to do your part. No matter where you are, that is a really good policy for preserving the natural world.
Fantastic. All right, let's go to Miss Peck's class. If you guys have a question, come on up.
Did you guys need like a protective case for the camera for the movie?
Right. Great question. So because it's so hot and humid, okay, so for those of you who wear glasses, if you're outside on a cold day and you walk into the house, what happens? Your glasses fog up, right? So the exact same thing happens to our cameras. Because it's so hot and humid in the cave, if you were to bring a camera in there, it would immediately get fogged up, but not only the lens, all the parts inside. And if you have this moisture that gets inside the camera, it can damage the camera. So what we had to do is we had to take all of our cameras, put them in a plastic bag, bring them into the cave in the plastic bag, and leave them there for about 2 hours to allow the camera to warm up to the same temperature as the cave. Once that happened, then we could walk into the cave, pick up the camera, take it out of the bag. Now it's not going to fog up. We do our filming, And then when it's time to leave for us to rest and put our suits back in the freezer, we would take out the batteries and we would take out the memory card. We would then offload the footage, charge the battery, leave the camera in the plastic bag in the cave, and then an hour, hour and a half later, when it's time to go back in the cave, we would go in and the camera would be okay, and we'd put our batteries and memory cards back in. Now, having said that, we still had one of our main cameras completely die on us. So high-tech stuff doesn't really work in there very well. Anything that's computer-based will probably die. Any camera that has any kind of moving parts, we couldn't use any camera that used any kind of tape mechanism at all because it just would not work. So there's all these considerations. That was a really great question because it is so hard for technology to work in those extreme environments.
And so you talked about filming this television program, and of course we got to see a little bit of that. What program was this? Because this sounds like you guys had quite a bit of experience going into extreme environments with cameras. So can you explain a little bit about that for the kids?
Yeah, so I was the host of Angry Planet, which was a TV show that has aired all over the world. We made about 50 episodes of that show. And this was, I believe, season 2 or season 3 of Angry Planet. And we have filmed in places like Antarctica, Siberia, in forest fires in Australia, tornadoes in the middle of hurricanes, like all the most extreme places on Earth. And in the process of filming that show, we have broken a few cameras. And this was one of the costliest ones in this place, when we broke one of our really good cameras because of the heat and humidity. It happens.
It happens. Great story, though.
It happens.
So I'm going to share that with classes at the end, a bunch about Angry Planet. You can look at it all on YouTube. It's fantastic stuff, some really, really great content. And George has shared a bunch from some of his other expeditions and some of his other presentations with us. So Miss Hewitt's class just typed in a question. I'm going to come and see if we get your audio working by some fluke. And if we can, great. I don't think we will. No. So I still can't hear you guys, but I appreciate you with the question. So the question from Miss Hewitt's group is, we're wondering if the crystals are slippery and whether there was any danger of you and or the camera people falling.
Yes. So these crystals are very smooth and they're damp. So yeah, they're very, very slippery. And of course, as we saw in some of the pictures, you've got the long crystals, but then you've also got these sort of smaller shark's teeth shaped crystals. And when you're crawling on top of the big ones, the last thing in the world you want to do is to slip and fall and land on one of the sharp ones. So yeah, there was a tremendous danger. So we had to be very cautious and move really slowly and deliberately. We had an ambulance at the surface waiting for us, but we also had a paramedic in that sort of waiting area just outside the cave. And he was there all day, and he would take our pulse. He would take our blood oxygen level to make sure that we were getting enough oxygen every time we went into the cave, and he'd measure it again every time we came out of the cave. So we had to basically go through a small physical several times throughout the day to make sure that we were physically capable of going into the cave and coming out again. Because it's so hot and humid, not only is it difficult to move, but it messes with your mind, right? You get delirious, and it's easy to get dehydrated as well. So you sweat like crazy, but it's so humid that it doesn't evaporate. That's how our body helps to cool us off, is our body sweats, and then as that sweat evaporates, it causes a cooling effect. But that doesn't happen in the cave. Also, our body temperature is about 37 degrees Celsius. Well, the cave is about 55 Celsius. So you can't even radiate the heat out of your body. So that's how dangerous it is. And when you combine all of those factors, plus the sharp crystals, plus how slippery they are, it's extremely dangerous. So that's one of the reasons why it's so hard to get permission to go there.
Very cool. All right, Miss Vicky's class, let's head to the US. If you guys have one, come on up, and then we'll do a whole other round. We're whipping through this, guys. This is great.
Can you hear us from here?
Yeah, we're perfect.
Okay, go ahead.
How do they grow underneath the water?
Yeah.
How do they grow under the water? Okay, well, crystals, the way that most crystals form is you have water or some other liquid, usually water, and you have dissolved minerals inside that water. It could be salt, for example. It could even be sugar. So those dissolved minerals will attach themselves to the side of the glass or the cave or whatever it is, and they will grow. And you can actually do a bunch of experiments at home where you can grow your own miniature little crystals from different things. You can grow them from salt or whatever, right? It just so happens that the conditions inside this cave were 100% perfect for hundreds of thousands of years. Just the right temperature, just the right amount of gypsum to cause these crystals to grow to these enormous lengths. And here's the thing. This cave was discovered by accident when they burrowed into this void, this chamber in the silver mine. There could be dozens or even hundreds of more of these caves out there in the Mexican desert that we've never seen, that we don't even know exist. We'd have to dig a whole bunch of holes in the ground to try and find them. Who knows what's down there? I think that's really cool.
It's one of the most unexplored type of habitats in the entire world. It's like the deep ocean where we barely even scratch the surface, literally in this case.
Exactly. But with the deep ocean, at least you know it's there.
Yeah.
With a cave like this, we could have a city built on top of one of these things that could be 10 times bigger. We have no idea because they're so deep underground.
How neat. All right, before I do a whole second round of questions, Miss Gallant's class, I'm going to come to you guys in a second, but they wanted to ask about the guitars. You brought this on yourself, George. This is where you chose to do it. Explain the guitars.
Oh, I've been a musician since I was 14. I play the bass guitar, so I've got my whole collection of them here. I still play music. It's something I do. I explore and photograph and video and all these scientific expeditions, but then I'm also a musician as well. You can do multiple things.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
We actually had a guitar inside a volcano once. We brought it down deep inside a volcano, and when we were done with it, we threw it into the lava, never to be seen again.
The most epic end to a rock concert of all time. All right, Miss Gallant's class. Yeah, if you guys have a question, though, come on up.
We actually have to recess right now starting, and I have kids going all over.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Tyrus wanted to ask one question.
Yeah, come on.
Loud first.
So, if you took a little shard with the crystals, how much would it sell for?
How much would it sell for if you had a little bit of crystal?
Yeah.
Ooh, like a little piece wouldn't be very much at all. Selenite crystals that are, that you can carry, small ones, they don't really have much value. I'm not sure exactly how much, but it's really not, it's not precious at all.
Yeah. Well, it's like you showed the geode earlier of quartz and of amethyst. I mean, these are things that you can find in any museum gift store for, 10, 15 bucks, if that. So, I mean, they look stunning, but they're not exactly gold or platinum.
Yeah, a big one that's the size of, I don't know, maybe 4 feet high, whatever, of amethyst would be, I mean, an expensive one would probably be a couple of $1,000s. But amethyst is actually even more valuable, I believe, than selenite, I believe.
Yeah, we'll quote you on that later. The test comes after. All right, Miss Levine's class, come on back up, guys. Go for it. Oh, sorry, 2 things again. There we go. Perfect, you're good.
What would happen to the crystals if it suddenly became very cold in the cave?
If it suddenly became very cold, here's the thing. I don't think it would have any effect on the crystals, but the one thing that would have an effect on the crystals would be if it were to become flooded again. So when the crystals are sitting in air, they stop growing. So for the past, 20 years or so, the crystals have not been growing. But there was an accident. There was part of the mine that flooded again. And I think for at least a brief period of time, the cave was flooded with water again. And as soon as that happens, now the crystals will actually start to continue growing again, very, very slowly, really slowly, but they would grow again if they're put back into the hot water.
And so you'd said in the film that once the mine is unusable anymore, they will flood it again, and it'll be off limits to people, I guess. Is there plans to do that? Do we know when the timeline for that is, that the cave will just be on its own again?
Yeah, so there's been some I don't know exactly what the situation is there right now, but I know that there have been a few changes. Part of the mine has reflooded because there was a flash flooding incident. There was some kind of accident, and part of the mine is not being pumped out now. So as of today, right now, I'm not 100% sure if the cave is still underwater or if it's above water right now. But at some point, the cave, or the mine rather, you can only mine an area for so long until you run out of silver And once the silver is mined out, then you're not making any more money, so the company can't stay open. They've been open for 100 years, so who knows, they may stay open for another 100 years, or who knows how long. But at some point, it's inevitable. It will no longer become profitable. They're going to turn off the pumps, and then the whole thing will flood again. We just don't know when that's going to happen.
So explore it while you can.
Yeah, if you can.
If you can. All right, Ms. Brzenko's class. If you guys have another one, go for it. We're great questions, guys, by the way.
Hunter. Okay, 1 second.
Take your time.
Dakota,
What minerals create the crystals?
could you hear that?
No, could you repeat for us?
What minerals created the crystal?
It's gypsum. So gypsum is really, really common. If you have an old piece of, like the walls of your house are made of gypsum, that drywall sheetrock material is made of gypsum. So if you take that gypsum, you take that piece of your drywall from the wall of your house, crush it up, put it in some really hot water for 500,000 years, you'll have these giant crystals that'll form.
Man, if only I had that much time. Okay, we'll start now. We'll see what happens. Exploring by the seat of your pants, year 550,000. We'll come back. All right, great question, guys. Let's go to Miss Peck's class. Come on back up, guys. Go for it. Let's go to Miss Peck's class. Come on back up, guys.
How big was the biggest crystal that was like there?
The biggest crystal was about, let's see here, about 12 meters long, 12 to 15 meters long. So 35, 40 feet long, and thicker around than I could put my arms. Like I could not put my arms around the biggest crystals for sure. Like bigger than a telephone pole, much bigger than a telephone pole.
Super cool. All right, Miss Hewitt's class asked a bunch of questions. I'm going to take one, go to Miss Wicky's, and wrap up with another. They asked, what kind of dangers come from being deep underground? Does it change the way you breathe? And why wouldn't you use an air tank to breathe if breathing's such a major issue? Why not have like a scuba suit sort of thing?
Right. So there's a whole variety of dangers to being down there. You're in a mine. You have to think of, there are mining accidents that happen. And while we were down there, we could hear them blasting. We could hear the dynamite of them blasting in other parts of the mine. And that was kind of creepy because every now and then you'd hear this and the walls would shake a little bit. And we knew that, they're using explosives not too far away from us. So there's a thought there, and mines collapse from time to time. But other than that, the deeper you go into the earth, the hotter it gets, right? We've got this crust, this tiny little piece of crust that we live on. And if you were to shrink the earth, as big as it is, down to the size of an apple, the crust that we live on is only about as thick as the skin of that apple. And the deepest mines that we've gone, the deepest mine is in South Africa. And even at that deepest depth, it's unbelievably hot, but we're still only in the crust. We haven't even reached deeper than the crust of the earth. So the deeper you go, the hotter it gets. Now, in terms of air, if you had a scuba tank, that would be very heavy, cumbersome, and the air that you're breathing from the scuba tank isn't chilled. So the reason why we had the ice respirators was so that we could keep our lungs nice and cool and breathe that chilled air to be very refreshing. So there was no lack of oxygen. There was plenty of oxygen down there. It's not like it was an environment where there was a lot of poison gas or underwater where you need scuba gear. That was never an issue. It's just the temperature. So it's easier and better to have a chilled respirator than to bring your own actual air supply down there.
Fantastic. Before two other questions, I just want to note, I'm going to pass along all of George's past sessions with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants to the classes when we're done. One recent one that he did with Joe was go down into Snow Lab. So for our Ontario classes, one of the coolest science facilities in the entire world is in an active mine in Sudbury. So it's called Snow Lab. We've done a whole bunch of them, but you can see George's expedition there too, not too far back. So I would encourage you guys to check that out when we're done as well. And I love the analogy of the apple. Thank you. I'm so glad we got that in. All right, Ms. Vicky's class, if you guys want to take our second class.
Loud. Why?
How long would it take
for you to get from the top of the mine to the bottom of the mine walking to the bottom of the mine?
Sort of caught part of that. How long would it take for you to get to the top of the mine, to the bottom of the mine, and then back? Is that the question?
Walking.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You would not want to walk. It's too hot. Yeah, you definitely, I don't know how long that would take. It would be really, really difficult to walk out of the mine. So parts of the mine are actually air conditioned. And they do that so that the workers don't overheat. There are some parts of the mine that are not air conditioned. And in those places, the miners can only go in for a very short period of time and then come out again because it's so dangerous and so hot. So let's think about this. Okay, so to drive from the surface down to where the cave is takes about 45 minutes. And that's going downhill. Coming back up in a car takes about the same time. I can't imagine how difficult it would be trying to walk up that. It would take hours and hours and hours, and you'd have to carry so much water with you because you'd be so dehydrated. But let's put things into even deeper perspective. The farther down, the cave is less than half the depth of the mine. So the mine extends much, much deeper than the actual cave is. So I don't even know how long it would take to drive from the surface all the way down to the deepest part of the mine and back up, let alone walk it. I wouldn't want to do it. No thanks. Bring the car.
And
I don't know if you can call an Uber to go 900 feet underground. I've never tried that, but I'm sure that would be pretty funny.
You'll have to do it and report back to us. But I'm glad, it's a good sign. If you don't want to do it, then it's probably not something that anyone will want to engage in. So I'm glad we got that in. All right. I love this question. It was written in by Miss Shewitt's thoughts. I want to wrap up with it. And that is, we're wondering what are some of George's favorite places that he's been?
This is number one, for sure. Of all the places I've been to on planet Earth, I've been to about 75 countries, every single continent. I've been to Greenland and Iceland and Antarctica and the Sahara Desert and the Australian outback. And I've been inside volcanoes in the Congo and the South Pacific and Central America, and I'm looking at my map of the world that's above my desk right now. And it's full of full of pins. But of all of these places, I think my favorite was the Crystal Cave because it's so beautiful and it was so harsh. And because you had to prepare so much to go in just for a few minutes, it really felt like being an astronaut setting foot on another planet. And that's a feeling that most people will never get to experience. And because we were able to bring cameras in there, we're able to share this otherworldly experience about this place on planet Earth, this extreme spot that is so unbelievably beautiful and at the same time so dangerous that I really want people to appreciate the beauty that is still yet to be discovered here on planet Earth. And this has got to be my favorite spot.
What a cool way to end. I'm not even going to follow up with any more questions. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, George. You know the drill. So what we're going to do now is for every class watching, I'm going to demute all your microphones in a second. And so boys and girls, if you guys could get ready to join me in saying a huge thank you to George for joining us today. You are all now demuted. Almost. There we go. Thank you so much, guys. Almost. There we go. Thank you so much, guys. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for all our class for joining us for Epic Earth. Again, we got like 20 more sessions to wrap out the month. And then February, all month long, we are showcasing amazing women in science. So we're kicking all the men out, amazing, incredible women from around the globe. So we look so forward to having you for that. George is excited too. And George, thank you so much for joining us today again. Such a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jesse.
All right.